Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Chanel Show. So, like I had mentioned in those disclaimers, first and foremost, this is not my usual posting schedule. My usual posting schedule is normally every Friday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. Now, my posting schedule will return to that once February 28th passes by, and the first video will be, I believe, March 6th. The first video after February 28th will be March 6th. The schedule might change depending on how February goes. If there's like a better date to post, like not a better date, if there's a better day of the week to post on or a better time, well, right now I'm just testing out noon, but if there's a better day of the week to post on, then I'll go with that. But as of right now, it's just Fridays at noon Pacific time. And also the specific video disclaimer, this is meant as like a critique and for also largely for entertainment purposes. And this is not an attack on anyone who enjoys the trend that we're talking about in this video or participates in it. It's just, like I said, it's meant as a critique, partly entertainment, partly critique, and also just a look at how this kind of a trend can affect bigger pictures and affect some of these bigger pictures in a not so great way. So getting into this video, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, we're talking about bookshelf wealth, the trend of bookshelf wealth that happened in, also if you see it go from like bright to dark, like all of a sudden like from down here, it's because I'm going between a couple different apps on my computer. We're talking about the bookshelf wealth trend that happened, like I think end of 2024 and going into 2025, and I've seen it kind of go up and down in popularity over the past year roughly. And specifically we're going to be talking about how it can be detrimental to the larger reading community. And again, this isn't a bad thing per se, but it's one of those things, like with many things, where once you get enough people doing it, and once you have enough people saying this is the XYZ, this is the 10 XYZ you need for bookshelf wealth, or to look like you have bookshelf wealth, then that's where it starts leading into the negative consumerism and negative capitalism, and it's not going to be helpful in the long run for a lot of readers. Okay, so basically what bookshelf wealth is a very specifically curated selection of books that you have read and enjoyed, which I feel like most readers try to do. It's something I've been trying to do, but it feels like, let's see, one second. I was just watching a video that was talking about this. So basically bookshelf wealth, it's not just about bookshelves, it's about the whole house as a whole. And books and bookshelves are very important to it, but it's not just about the books themselves. And that's where I personally think where it can start to be into the detrimental, because then yes, the initial intent behind bookshelf wealth is that these are very highly curated books, and everything about the home is very highly curated, and you're trying to keep up the appearances of the home and keep the basic character of the home the same. And you're supposed to have like reading nooks that have books in them. You're supposed to have books that have curated books in them. Everything about the books is heavily curated, and everything about the house is supposed to go seamlessly together. And so again, it's not just about the books. It's about having the books, having the bookshelves, having a house that looks well lived in, having reading nooks, having cozy reading nooks, having reading nooks that are by a window, having just the whole house looked well lived in. And part of that is having the bookshelves be somewhat lived in and being read and being curated, which again I think is totally fine. But it's like I said, it's if you're getting to a point where how do I phrase this? If you're getting to a point where you're focusing on the whole cohesion of the house, which, you know, I've done when I've been planning out like what I would want my future home to look like. This is like the home I'm in now. It's the house that I grew up in and that I spent over 2 decades in. And like this, like the home I'm in now, it's not necessarily what I would want my future home to be. And I have a very well curated future home in mind. But like my bookshelves, my books are not necessarily the center of attention for the curated part of my house. And like the books will definitely be part of that, but it's like it's not the emphasis, because my books are already very highly curated based on my tastes. And I feel like many readers are kind of getting into that space now where they're trying to curate their books a little bit more based on their interests, their tastes, what they've liked, what they haven't liked, also trying to read diversely and trying to take into account different stories, you know. So it's like, it's that kind of a thing where like I personally feel like if you're focusing so much on the cohesion, you're going to have it's going to end up to a point where some people will just start to have books on their bookshelves just to make it feel a little bit more legit, rather than it actually being curated, if that makes sense. And a lot of the pictures that I've seen in relation to bookshelf wealth, it's maybe like 60 to 75% knickknacks and decor items on the bookshelves, and maybe 25 to 40% books. Like, I've shown my bookshelves, or at least what they look like now. I've shown my bookshelves before, and there's a lot of knickknacks. You can kind of tell what time of the year it is when I'm recording this video, at least. There's a lot of knickknacks on it, and that's just because I kind of like, I've tried it a few times without all the stuff, but then it kind of feels bare. But I feel like I need more books, I need more bookshelves. So it's like, that's not gonna happen for a while, where it's like my bookshelves are pretty well lived in, but at the same time it's not. I would say my bookshelves are maybe 60 to 75% books, and then it's maybe 25 to 40% knickknacks, just based on like the size of the knickknacks. So it's one of those things where it's like, at what point do people just start ignoring the read and highly curated part of bookshelf wealth to make it seem like they have bookshelf wealth? Because again, like I said earlier, it's like the initial intent is that these books are highly curated and you've already read them and you've enjoyed them, you gained something from them. That's the initial intent, but that's not necessarily how everyone is going to take it. That's not necessarily how everyone is going to use this or use this term. So I do have a couple of links I want to look at. And the first one is like a little Reddit thread under the r/books thread, and it's, do you have bookshelf wealth? And I have a bunch of links down below in the description if you want to look a little bit more into it, or you can just type in bookshelf wealth into your search engine. So this person shares a photo, and then they shared an archive link. Let's see. Oh, the New York Times archive link. Now this one is really based on this one is New York Times, so it's like you do need to pay for it. So at least the link that they share in the Reddit thread. The Reddit thread you do not need to pay for, but the New York Times link they share you do need to pay for. But and also too, it's like so I was just overviewing this one comment, which I'm not going to get into. It's the first comment that I saw, but basically it kind of diminishes like indie bookstores and local libraries and the benefit that they have in communities and societies if you're with these book talk trends, like not just bookshelf wealth, but especially bookshelf wealth. But it's like with this emphasis on having books, on buying books, on curating books in your own home library, you don't know, I've said it before on my channel and I'll say it again, you do not need to be constantly buying books to be considered a reader. You do not need to be constantly buying books to have bookshelf wealth. At the end of the day, I think we need to like redefine what exactly bookshelf wealth means and kind of shift the meaning of it, if that makes sense. But like I do feel like it diminishes the way the book talk trend flew with it. I do think it kind of diminishes the use of public spaces that have work that have books, like I said, indie bookstores or even chain bookstores and local libraries or school libraries. So it's like, it's at what point do we balance out between what we have in our home and consumerism and capitalism? At what point do we balance that with supporting local libraries and supporting indie bookstores and not just buying books for the sake of an aesthetic? So, and I liked one of my own videos down below in the description where it's like the performative reading culture and TikTok's role in turning reading and other hobbies into an aesthetic, because I feel like that's this trend, bookshelf wealth, it really leaned heavily into that and turning reading into more of an aesthetic rather than keeping it at its purest form, a hobby. And some people do have to read for a living, but it's like, if we're looking at like book talk and book talk spaces and reader spaces, I would say maybe 80% of it is hobby based and 20% is job based. So like, it's like I said, at what point do we draw the line between just accepting that we can read books and have bookshelf wealth without consumerism and supporting our local libraries? Like, at what point do we balance out consumerism and capitalism with supporting local libraries? So one comment that I said is, one comment that I'm seeing is the archive link didn't work for them. Again, it's New York Times, so you do have to pay for it, which totally fine. We should still support local newspapers when and where we can, but it's totally understandable if you can't. Archive link didn't work for me, but according to another article I found, quote, in order to achieve bookshelf wealth, you need to appreciate the art of collecting and to surround yourself with things that fill your soul. This means that in addition to being an avid reader, you'll want to pay careful attention to the supplementary items that you store on your shelves, ceramics, photographs, candles, and other assorted knickknacks, and ensure that they are reflective of your hobbies and interests, end quotes. So by that definition, yes, I collect a lot of things and I like to display them, including on bookcases with my books, because that's the point of having them for me, to be surrounded by stuff I like. But by my definition, no, I think it's a stupid term. I have books I love on my bookshelves, and I also display some random pieces of stuff on them that I also love because it's my house and I decorate how I want, which means decorating with and displaying things I love. To me, that's just decorating your space how you like to decorate your space. I mean, yeah, it's just strive to find what you like and how you want to curate your space because it's yours, but for yourself, not for clout. And I do agree with that, where it's like, I feel like, again, it's going into the consumerism and capitalism discussion of it, where it's like, once you start banking on a trend, you have more people trying to bank on that as well and trying to go viral on that term, on that trend as well. And I feel like book talk is a very easy place to shift the blame to, but at the same time, I mean that, like, in that sense, on one hand, it's a very easy place to shift the blame to, in the sense of, like, book talk is not always to blame, but on the other hand, book talk is sometimes to blame because of how it perpetuates consumerism and capitalism when we really don't need to perpetuate consumerism and capitalism. And, like, remember to drink, guys. And at the end of the day, it's like I said, like, you don't, like I said earlier, maybe we need to redefine what bookshelf wealth means, and maybe bookshelf wealth isn't necessarily curating your whole house. Like, the thing is I feel like bookshelf wealth became more about curating the whole house rather than about curating the books, which isn't on book talk's part. It's on, like, home decor talk, if that's the thing. That would be the best place to lay the blame with, or lay the trend with, for bookshelf wealth. But maybe we can redefine bookshelf wealth as how you curate your reading habits and what you're reading. rather than curating your physical bookshelf and curating your home as a whole. So maybe that's the best way to do it. Another comment I'm seeing is that it's like the next comment I'm seeing. It's noticeable that this picture shows bookshelves with hardly any books on them. Time and again, I try to browse ideas for home libraries and find shelves covered in plant pots and knickknacks and a marked shortage of books. Someone responded with, "I totally agree with this. It's like where are the overstuffed bookcases with books sitting around on the floor because there's no room for them. Or I go out to reread them but haven't put them back." Every picture from this article has more knickknacks and empty space than ever appeared on my shelves. LOL. Another person responded saying half the so-called home libraries don't even have decent light and comfy chairs. Another person said it's not a rolled bookshelf unless there's a couple of leftover paperbacks stacked on top of the row. Whoa, okay. Another person responded saying, "I will always lust after my grandparents' previous house only because they had a library with floor-to-ceiling built-in shelves on 2 whole walls, a 4-foot tall bookshelf the length of a third wall minus the door, and then a window, desk, and chairs for the third wall. An excellent lighting. Bummer was the gravel pit across the road." So it's like, yeah, it's like for me and for a lot of readers, when you think of bookshelf wealth, it's not the curated home, it's a curated bookshelf. It's having a library. It's having a home library. And I think that's where the bookshelf wealth trend kind of tapered off into home decor, and where we need to kind of lay it on the feet of home decor. And kind of where, I'm going to stop there with the Reddit thread, but kind of where I'm thinking it can be kind of harmful is it like I was saying, it encourages consumerism and capitalism, and it's not a bad thing to pay into consumerism, capitalism. It's not. But it can be very detrimental for people who cannot be spending a whole bunch of money on books. Sorry, my ring light is dying. There are a lot of families, a lot of households, whether you're a single person household or a multiple person household, there are many households that cannot be spending a whole lot of money on books. Maybe they can't even spend like $20 to $25 on books, which is the price of one. They can't be spending a whole lot of money on books, but they like reading, and they borrow from the local library, they borrow from apps like Libby and Hoopla, and they turn around and see on Book Talk that the bookshelf wealth trend is going, and it starts to make them feel bad about themselves, make them feel that they're not good readers because they don't have an outpouring of books. And like I said earlier in this video, and I will say it again, I will just keep parroting it and repeating it, you do not have to have an overflow of books to be a reader. You do not have to have a bunch of books in your home to be a reader. And to also parrot what, to also repeat what some other booktubers have said and other YouTubers have said, where they've done discussions about consumerism and overconsumption. You should not be buying things with money you do not have. And I've sometimes fallen victim to it. We've all fallen victim to buying things with money we do not have. And we it's human nature. We've all done it at some point. But at this point in time, we really need to be conscientious about where our money is going to, with prices skyrocketing. And like the prices around Thanksgiving, I'm in the US, like the prices around Thanksgiving is so insane how pricey things have gone just over the course of like just over the course of like 1 to 1.5 weeks. Like around Thanksgiving it got so freaking pricey, and around Christmas again got so freaking pricey. And like we all try to do discounts to find sales, but it's like there's only so far that discounts and sales can go. So we really need to be conscientious and conscious about where our money's going. And like I just said, and like many booktubers and YouTubers in general have said, we really can't be buying money. We really can't be buying stuff with money we don't have. And, or maybe I shouldn't phrase it as stuff. We really can't be buying, frivolous stuff isn't the right thing, but we can't be buying things like books with money we don't have. We can't be buying decor items with money we don't have. We can't be buying XYZ. We can't be buying additional things with things we don't have. We need to focus on the necessities of what we need. So groceries, any household miscellaneous stuff like laundry stuff, cleaning supplies. If you have pets, getting food for them, making sure they're well taken care of, that kind of stuff. You don't need to be spending money on other stuff outside of that with money you do not have. And if you're able to budget out and you're able to say, okay, this amount is going to vet bills, this amount is going to grocery bills, this amount is going to electric, and if you have some left over after budgeting, great. And like, you can spend that however you want, but again, it's kind of that thing where if you don't have any money outside of the budget, you can't be spending money on stuff you don't have. And that's where this can be really detrimental, because it starts to make people think that they need to be a certain way, look a certain way, or have their home library look a certain way to be considered a reader. And this can be applied to, like, this kind of conversation can be applied to any trend, not just a book related trend, but focusing on books and bookshelf wealth. Seeing this can make people think that, like I said, that their bookshelves need to look a certain way, that all their books need to be read, that they need to have a never-ending TBR pile, when that's really not the case. Sorry, I keep pausing. I just keep needing to step out. So, geez words. The other article I wanted to look at was from Reed Smythe, Bookshelf Wealth Gone Bad, debunking the latest TikTok trend. And the latest TikTok decorating trend known as bookshelf wealth, a design aesthetic centered on shelves haphazardly placed on shelves of haphazardly placed books and objects displayed on bookshelves to achieve a cozy and perfect look. Anyone who has been living with books and art and beloved objects collected over time may find it curious to discover that this is a new trend. That's true, because like I said, I just showed my bookshelf. I have knickknacks all over my room, and then what I would do, I haven't done it recently, but I would cycle through art prints like on the space behind me. It would be on my walls before I reshifted my room around a little bit, but I would be cycling through like art pieces that I collected at Expo or got from other places. So it's just that kind of a thing where it's like, I've always done this. So at the risk, some of this I am reading verbatim, at the risk of sounding snobbish, I'm wondering around, apparently I can't read. I'm wondering aloud if the TikTokers defining the latest range and decorating acknowledge that, like any form of wealth, bookshelf wealth can only be amassed over years and years of careful saving. Yes, I 100% agree with that. It's not only years of careful saving, it's also years of just going through things and kind of seeing what fits in your taste still. Like, I constantly am going, because I don't have a whole lot of space for my books, I showed my bookshelf earlier, because I don't have a lot of space for books, what I did recently is I added like a second row to a couple of the bottom shelves and a second row of books, because I could fit it there without them falling. But what I do pretty regularly is I will go through my books and I will see, like, okay, am I going to read, if I haven't read it, okay, am I going to read this within X amount of months or X amount of time? Okay, if I have read it, okay, is this something I want to read again? There are some books, like Natasha Lester books, where it's like, I want to read them again, but I don't think I can, just emotionally, and I love Natasha Lester's books, so it's like, okay, I'm keeping this. But other books where it's like, I'm not as head over heels about the author or their works, where it's like, okay, I've read it, do I see myself reading it again? And if not, like, or do I see myself wanting to read it again? And if not, like, usually that book comes off my shelves and I'm giving it away, I'm not hauling it, I'm donating it to my local bookstore or my local library, you know, that kind of a deal. And so it's like, it's years of careful saving, careful curating, and just careful going through everything and just being like, okay, like I need to make a little bit of space. It doesn't have to be a lot of space, but I need to go through this every once in a while. So it's that kind of video. Yeah, so this person continues on to say, I once sat next to a high-powered lawyer at a dinner party in New York who was raving about having just purchased an amazing collection of books at an auction. When I asked what they included, his response sent me, quote, I can't remember. I bought them because the leather was so beautiful. End quote. I was immediately put in mind of a shelter magazine trend that was so popular at a time, which recommended covering your collection of books with white or colored paper and organizing by shade to create a minimalist effect. Ouch. Bookshelf wealth is not minimalist, and it's certainly not color-coded. So a truly beautiful bookshelf, I'm just reading a little bit verbatim here, a truly beautiful bookshelf is filled with books that have been read and loved, whose covers are tattered or ringed with coffee stains, art that has been collected and tells a story about, captures the collector's eye, objects that were brought home from foreign travels and mixed with foraged and found objects that have meaning to the bookshelf's owner. In other words, bookshelf wealth isn't something you can achieve with a refresh or an install. It is something that grows organically and layers over time without self-consciousness or artifice. So it's like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's not really something that can be a trend or a fad, really, because you do have to spend a lot of time sitting with it and curating it. And curating takes a lot of time. And, like, yes, curating can happen. You can do a lot of curating in the moment. Like, okay, my usual genres are fantasy and romance, so let's get all the sci-fi off. Okay, my usual authors tend to write characters like this, so let's get books with characters not like that off. It's that kind of a deal where it's like, yes, it can be done very much in the moment, but it's not going to be, it's not like a one-stop shop project. It is something that is going to take quite a bit of time to continue to finish and to upkeep, because it's like, if let's say you stop curating your books, and let's say you just stop, and maybe a couple years later you still have like the same set of knickknacks on your bookshelf, the same set of books on your bookshelf, and let's say for the most part a lot of the knickknacks have lost value to you, and let's say you're at a point where you no longer enjoy sci-fi, but your bookshelves are 90% sci-fi. At that point, the bookshelf wealth loses its meaning in that sense, where the knickknacks no longer have meaning. You're no longer a sci-fi person, so it's like, okay, then that's not bookshelf wealth, it's just stuff that's taking up space. So that's why it's like, it's not a one-stop shop thing. It's not something you can do in a day and be like a one and done thing. So, and that's why it's like, it's why it can be very detrimental for a lot of readers, because if they're expecting to be like, okay, I'm gonna have bookshelf wealth in 1 week, no, you're not. So this so this person, Reed Smith, goes on to say that they've collected a few thoughts inspired by how many people agreed with him on their Instagram. I don't know if it's him. How many people agreed with him on their Instagram. So here are a few collected thoughts on the matter. My own and those shared with me, as well as a few recommendations. Okay, so I'm just going to read parts of this, which I 100% agree with. So 1, be patient. Bookshelf wealth is achieved over many years, and books that were chosen for aesthetic purposes don't achieve wealth at all. In fact, stage managing a bookshelf is an impoverished approach. An empty space awaiting your favorite books is far better than buying books by the yard. Find a favorite vase or bowl to fill the void until you finish your next novel, or until you find a book that you enjoyed. And like I said, it's one thing where I agree. Jeez, words are not coming to me easily. I agree, but I also think that you can, like, kind of like what I said I do, where it's like you kind of go through, see what you're not feeling anymore, and you can take books off, and you can still curate books that way. And yes, it is perfectly fine to have a partly empty bookshelf, as long as you're putting stuff in there that matches what you enjoy in books. So number 2, join a book of the month club. My local bookstore, Parnos, co-founded by I can't say that word, by Ann Pratchett, has a first edition program in which one of the resident experts selects a new book each month and sends it to you by mail. Not only do these programs introduce you to new book recommended by voracious readers, they also create the kind of patient discipline I've been talking about. It's a fun way to build a true collection of books you can recommend to your friends. 3, hang art from your shelves for 2 reasons. 1, because it's chic and interesting. 2, because it's helpful in hiding white space. Once your collection is overflowing, you can take it down and hang something smaller, or just keep it and remove it when you want to retrieve a book. My husband John is what you might call a bookshelf billionaire. His office is stacked with books not only on the shelves but growing in towers from the floor. Even so, we've hung an enormous painting of Thomas Jefferson's Monticello on a bank of his bookshelves and centered over an antique Chesterfield sofa. So, number 4, stack your oversized books to use as bookends. I suspect many of the folks reading this post love the decoration of houses as much as I do, and have a great collection of interior design books. So like anything that's like really huge, 100% you can use them as bookends. You can use them to like stack stuff on top of, or just use it as decoration, because like who's really reading this? Number 5, avoid at all costs the the installed look. There's nothing more soulless than a bookshelf that's been assembled in a few hours and filled with objects and books bought at local interior shops. For one thing, it reflects an aesthetic of someone else, and for another, it doesn't achieve the kind of layering and warmth that offers a glimpse into your life for visitors and friends. Number 6 and last, become a collector now. This may sound materialistic, but it's never too late to collect beautiful things that speak to you and bring you joy. I've been doing a lot of collecting lately, and while I've gotten closets full of clothes I'll never wear again, and a toy closet that could fill FAO Schwartz, I've been surprised to find the things that I've purchased on vacations or come across in favorite antique stores or flea markets have staying power. They feel like old friends, and they happen to look great on my bookshelves. So I do, like, at the end of the day, bookshelf wealth can be very detrimental if we don't take time to consider what it actually means. And again, I do feel like it leans more into the home decor side of TikTok and just social media in general, because of the emphasis on everything being cohesive and looking lived in, and bookshelves are a part of that. And I think that at the end of the day, we want, if we're focusing on the book aspect of it, we don't necessarily need to be worrying about getting the full cohesive bookshelf wealth look on our bookshelves as soon as possible, because like that one creator said, it takes time to assemble those things. When you're a curator, it does take time. So at the end of the day, just be patient with yourself. If this is something you can, if you want to do and are able to do, but it is not necessarily something that is necessary or needed to be a reader or to be a curator. You don't need to buy a bunch of stuff at once. You don't need to buy a bunch of books at once, because then it loses the meaning of bookshelf wealth and what it intended to be at the start. So those are my thoughts. It can be very detrimental, but it also can be very beneficial. So I think at the end of the day, we really need to be careful about what we're buying into, both with what we're seeing on social media and believing, and also on the other hand, what we're buying into financially. So that is the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'd love to have a discussion about this, and I will see you all in my video tomorrow.